You guys actually voted, and Team Ayleid won. I was kind of rooting for High Rock, but oh well. I will succumb to your desperate lore needs. So today we are going to be discussing the ancient race known as the Ayleids. I'm getting really sick of talking about elves lately, you know. Alright, so the Heartland High Elves. Lots of details about these guys. And for all you Elder Scrolls veterans like me who have played Oblivion, you will have come across these lovely Ayleid runes which have stood for hundreds and hundreds of years. So let's talk about them. The elves themselves and the history and background of the Ayleid race. So who are the Ayleids? Well, as I said already, they are the Heartland High Elves of Tamriel. Or were, should I say to be more precise. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. I won't bore you with the petty details, so I'll make a summary of how they develop. So in the Atmora lore video I just did, I spoke of the Elnufi, I hope I pronounced that right, the ancient elves of Atmora. Okay, well they had ancestors called the Aldmor, and the Aldmor had descendants called the Ayleid. They couldn't just stick to one family name, no. Okay, so let's go back to the Merethic Era, I still cannot do TH. A time when Nirn as a planet was trying to figure itself out. Alright, so sometime during this era, the Aldmer left their home of Aldmeris to go to the Somerset Isles in Tamriel. A few of the special Aldmer, including this guy here, Topal the pilot, mapped out the areas of Tamriel, mostly the seas and all that, to get a feel for the new homeland. The coming years were just a race making its place, spreading out a bit and all that. So you know, years pass by and some of the group decide, Mom, Dad, I'm all grown up now and I want to move out. So they do that exact thing. Lots of them actually. You're really gonna like this part. Ever wondered how some of the races of elves came about? Well, multiple groups formed to leave and these groups went to different places. One group went to a distant land which today is known as Valenwood, and that group became the Bosmers. The ones in the Somerset Isles stayed and adapted into the scumbags I hate today known as the Altmer. Another group headed to the lands of Morrowind and became the Chimer. Another group left for the mainlands of Cyrodiil and became, yep, you guessed it, the Ayleids. So unlike the other races, the Ayleids flourished. They created smaller groups around Cyrodiil, which these groups then turned into smaller kingdoms. In the very center, they constructed the great and gorgeous white gold tower, and we have all seen this piece of art, haven't we? If you played Oblivion, by the way, you have been to one of these smaller kingdoms. Nenalata is an example. This is a very old place. Next time you walk into it, know you were stepping into a once great kingdom. Anyway, so the Ayleids became so big and powerful that they ended up expanding outside of Cyrodiil into Valenwood, the Black Marsh, Hammerfell, and other places. By the end of the Merethic Era, the Ayleids were one of the greatest empires Tamriel had ever seen. So let's move on to the First Era, where a hero would change the course of Tamriel's future forever. This First Era would also mark the end of the true power of the Ayleids, and it would all be because of a slave girl who was born near the Niben Bay. So just like the end of the Merethic Era, the Ayleids controlled basically all of Cyrodiil and more outside of it. Let's move forward to around 100 years into the First Era, probably a bit more. A baby girl was born in the Niben, born a slave, born a nobody. Her name was Alicia. So growing up, Alicia eventually ended up in Sancre Tor, the now ruined fortress in Cyrodiil, and through divine events managed to slay the Ayleids in that area after convincing her fellow slaves to help. Word got out to other slaves, human slaves of the Ayleids, that a slave queen in Cyrodiil was going to take the lands from the dreadful Ayleids. So after much talk, much gathering, much preparation, the year 242 came around and the revolution began. Civil war was about to spread across Tamriel. What you need to remember here, and I don't think I mentioned earlier, is that the Ayleids received their help from the Daedric lords. So they hold armies of the dead. This is what they used to originally enslave men. So the Ayleids aren't to be taken lightly. So many battles took place, lots of bloodshed, but with the luck of the gods, the imperial people, with the help of the Needs, who were an old race of men, and then the Nords, many of these battles were won. One major battle that had great effect was the First Pogrom, which was a massacre of the Ayleids up north by the imperial people. So the Ayleids are slowly losing while the Imperials are slowly winning and gaining more land and more followers. So with a good chunk of land, they decide to send their armies to the White Gold Tower. Pelinal Whitestrake was a part of the Elysian Order, as it was called, and took on Umaril the Unfeathered, who a lot of you would know from playing Oblivion, in combat atop the tower. Both great warriors ended up dead, but after many hours of fighting, the Imperials and Needs had done it. They had conquered the main land, the main part of the Ayleid Empire, the White Gold Tower. From here it was smooth sailing, with the remaining kingdoms being scouted out and crushed by Alicia and her followers. So the end of the Ayleids are coming. We have the late Ayleid period, which lasts between the years 245 1498. So with order now at hand, Alesia created the Alesian doctrines, which created harsh ruling for the Ayleids, ruling that would be the downfall of them. She wanted to unite men, elves and Needs, but the Ayleids would not give in, even with them losing so much. So one by one, community after community, the Ayleids fell. Ayleid culture was being destroyed too, with books, artifacts and other valuables being burnt and broken. So the end of this period came, and we have the final separation of the Ayleids. Like the ancient times, the Ayleids split up into groups and headed in different directions as nobody in Cyrodiil liked them, would you believe? Some headed to Black Marsh, they died. To Elsewhere, they died. To Skyrim, they were hunted down and murdered by a butcher. Then the ones who went to Valenwood were accepted and lived upon the group. However, eventually they disappeared. So would you believe some Ayleids managed to live on into the Second Era? They had small tribes here and there, and some other ones living as teachers and scientists in parts of Tamriel. They all, however, eventually died as the lack of other sexes made it difficult to breed. They say the last true king of the Ayleids is that one from Iso, King Lalorian Dinar. Overall, the Ayleids did not make it to the Third Era, to our knowledge. In the Knights of the Nine DLC, which takes place in the Third Era, in the year 433, Umaril makes a return but is ultimately defeated by the hero of Kvatch. So what I personally feel is that the Ayleids either died out, became something else, or just disappeared. They had nobody to rally their culture, no leaders, no goals, just stragglers randomly placed around Tamriel. There is theories that they are still around somewhere, but no, I don't really believe it. Why would they be? They weren't just defeated, they were crushed, destroyed, bamboozled. They are dead and buried. If you want to feel all Ayleid-like and stuff, go play Oblivion and explore the Ayleid runes. Know that you are in a place that once flourished and was destroyed by Alesia and her followers. It is an awesome thing going into places around Tamriel and knowing its history. Makes you feel all cool and stuff, like standing on the road to Anvil and knowing that Maik's great-great-great-granddad once stood there. It's so awesome, it's so Maik. Anyways guys, that is the basic history of the Ayleids and who they are, what they were and where they are today. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe learned something new. Not sure what I will choose out of the long list of topics for the next one. Might get you to vote again, I don't know, but I'm sure I'll figure it out. But as always, I hope you enjoyed.